am so totally onto you. I saw exactly what you did this morning. Don't think you're going to get away with it. You saw the title, said Quarterback Monday, and you're like, oh no, quarterback. No, I am totally quarterbacked out. Fear not, for I have found another path. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into hockey and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates, the other two teams in town I cover, the same place you found this. No, there will not be a solitary mention of you-know-who on this episode of Quarterback Monday. There won't even be a solitary mention of the other you-know-who that I enjoy talking about on this Quarterback Monday. I'm instead going for the you-don't-know-who that's probably, I feel, close to certainly coming to the Steelers via the NFL draft later this month. Now, who might that be? Lots of different ways to look at this. But you got to start with the macro, and that is that there is near universal agreement that this is not a good quarterback class. And in the city where that was deemed irrelevant just a handful of years ago, and the Steelers were, by God, going to get either Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis or somebody in the first round, that probably should matter more than anything else. By some accounts, there's one quarterback worth taking, at least taking up high in this draft. That's Cam Ward out of Miami. Others will make arguments for Shedeur Sanders, Deion's kid, Colorado. He's one of those all-over-the-map guys. Seen as a first-rounder, probably going to be a first-rounder. Questions there, okay? Where it gets interesting, I think, from the Pittsburgh perspective, is when you start hearing about these surging types really at any position in the draft, which on one hand is kind of funny because it's not like they're playing right now, so they're not doing something to get better. We're actually past all of the various scouting combines and pro days and everything for the most part. So what are they doing to move up? The answer to that is simple. The people who do the reporting, not the analyzing, but the reporting, there's a difference. Meaning the ones talking to executives, doing the stuff that's more in my line of work than, say, for example, our own Matt Williamson. What he does is the analyzing. He's studying video. He's breaking down players' strengths and weaknesses. Well, this is that time of year where in the draft, the reporters kind of take over because what they're trying to find out is what the teams have found out. Any one team in the National Football League, with the exception of the Cleveland Browns, is equipped with more intelligence, more insight, more information about the entire draft class than all of the outside experts combined. That's not a knock on the experts. It's underscoring that there's no expert anywhere who has an army of scouts out there, or for that matter, a sub-army of analytics people. So I'm going to repeat this. Every single team but the Browns has way more than anybody else. So what you start trying to do is, from the reporting context, is find out what it is that they're thinking, what it is that they're talking about. Now, I say that, and there are also some clues that make it to the surface. Here's a fun one. Jalen Milroe out of Alabama, who everybody acknowledges is a project, was just over the weekend invited to attend the NFL draft, which is in Green Bay this year. Of course, it'll be right here in Pittsburgh next year. And that's something that the NFL does only if they're at least close to sure that somebody's going to be taken in the first round. They don't want to embarrass the kid. They don't want to have those constant camera shots in the green room of him looking sad, his girlfriend looking even sadder. Now, who would be interested in Milroe? No way he'd go high in the first round. Which team has met with him? Which team has expressed a liking for him? You see what I mean? Here's another one. Jackson Dart. This one's actually come up a lot just over the last 2 or 3 days, even though I will remind that Dart hasn't played a football game in quite a while. Why is Dart rising? It's because reporters have found out that teams are interested in him, maybe to a higher degree than what most of the rankings show. Now, Dart's interesting. He's interesting. Hear this out. At Ole Miss this past season, he was named first team All-SEC. He led the entire NCAA in passing yards per attempt at 10.8. He had the third most passing yards overall, 4,279. Played in his school's bowl game, which scouts really love. The Steelers really respect that. Threw for 400 yards in that. And when you watch him, when you watch his highlights, what you see is someone who looks, wow, that's just an NFL quarterback. That's his style. Now, add on to that the Steelers had him in for a visit to the South Side this past Friday. And even more of the wheels start turning. Aha, see, yeah, the Steelers, they need a quarterback. Now, I say this, and I've not only watched a lot of film now on Dart, I've now read a lot about him. And I can tell you that the people who have watched way more film of the kid than I ever could or would just think nothing of him. Like, they think he shouldn't even be drafted, according to a couple of them that I read. And the reason for that, and this is something that would easily be hidden within any set of highlights, is that he is apparently a one-read guy. I found this statistic to be amazing. This is from everyone's very good friends at Pro Football Focus. When Dart threw to his initial read, one read, he had a 92.9 passing grade that was the second highest in all of college football. But when he had to get off of that read, when he had to go to the other side of the field or look around for the other receiver or whatever, his grade dropped all the way to 60.3, which ranked 63rd in college football. If that isn't fixed, my friends, neither is he. There is no such thing as a one-read quarterback who survives in the NFL. There's no such thing as a one-read quarterback who makes it onto an NFL field for more than a month. My conclusion to all this? Well, I think everyone, but especially over at South Water Street, should revisit the Pickett draft and go back to their own analyses from back then. Not ours, not the experts, not what the reporters were saying, other teams said. Go back to their own analyses and see how they reached the conclusion that Pickett was a first rounder, because he wasn't. Not in any other draft. And the same, very likely, is true of this class of quarterbacks beyond Ward and maybe beyond Sanders. When we come back, J1Q. Luxenberg, Garbett, Kelly & George is a personal injury law firm in Western Pennsylvania that represents injured people in automobile accidents, workers' compensation cases, and medical malpractice claims. The attorneys at Luxenberg, Garbett, Kelly & George pride themselves in doing what they say they're going to do. It's important to them that when they make you a promise, they keep that promise. And this law firm has been keeping promises for over 80 years. Luxenberg, Garbett, Kelly & George has been AV rated. That's the highest rating a law firm can receive for legal ability and ethics. And the lawyers at the firm have been designated super lawyers, that's a real thing, for over 15 years. Rare combination there. Luxenberg, Garbett, Kelly & George has offices in Cranberry, Newcastle, Beaver Falls, Butler, and Elwood City. Learn more about them at lgkg.com or by calling 888-842-5454. Again, that's 888-842-5454. Today's J1Q comes from Santiago, who says, "Hey DK, I love this show. How do you think the Steelers should go about orienting and revamping their defense after being embarrassed in Baltimore?" I'm going to bite back a little bit on this, Santiago. Not much, okay? Not much. Just a little bit. And here's why. The Steelers gave up, say it with me, 299 yards on the ground in that playoff debacle at M&T Bank Stadium. It wasn't bad. It wasn't embarrassing. It was beyond both of those. But I've got a problem with the now seemingly common description of the Steelers' run defense as being defined by that one performance. The fact, and boy, do I ever mean fact, is that the Steelers were not at all bad against the run over the course of the full schedule. The further fact is that they weren't bad at all. They were actually quite good up until they hit that whole mess of a schedule with the 3 games in the 11 days and the caliber of those opponents and all else. And I'm going to read to you a list of the best run defenses in football for the 2024 season. Number 1 was the one that you would expect. It's the Ravens. They're at 80.1 yards per game. Number 2, the Vikings at 93.4. 3 were the Broncos at 96.4. 4 were the Buccaneers at 97.8. 5 were the Lions at 98.4. And the Steelers were 6th. 6th best in the league, allowing 98.7 yards per game. Now, if I look at the teams that are in the top 10 overall, 10th was the Eagles, who won it all and who are seen as the paragon of run defense. Maybe even more so than the Ravens are. I just mean from a perception standpoint. You just think of the Eagles as just having this unbeatable line and nobody will ever run on the Eagles. The Steelers were better than the Eagles in this regard. The other teams who are in this group, including the ones that I read off to you, they were playoff teams. Just like the Steelers were. They were playoff teams. They were some of the better teams in the league, actually, between Philadelphia, Detroit, Kansas City, Baltimore, Minnesota. So what you have here, I believe, is a thing. I've used this terminology for years, most often with baseball. Last bad thing I saw syndrome. I came up with this one year when a reliever for the Pirates named Brian Boehringer had a terrible start to the season. Dude was lights out after the first 2 weeks. Was just outstanding. Didn't matter. Everyone said Boehringer sucks. Boehringer sucks. And I realized there's nothing he can do. There's nothing Boehringer can do to shake this label because last bad thing I saw syndrome. This is also, by the way, one of the reasons that I bristle a little bit whenever people are talking about defensive line as being a need for the Steelers. No, it's a want. A need for the Steelers was wide receiver before the DK Metcalf acquisition. A current need for the Steelers is slot corner. You can want to find the next Cam Hayward, but you don't need to when he's coming off an all-pro season. And you definitely don't need to because of one football game that very, very, very plainly was an outlier for the defense as a whole. I appreciate the question. I am always glad when that subject comes up. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow.